to you from underneath a peach blossom. It's time for an episode of Be Awesome. Find positivity throughout your life and work, just like our mascot rooster, Steve the Jerk.
Hello, Be Awesome listeners. You are listening to episode 41 of the Be Awesome podcast, and I am in sunny Scottsdale, Arizona here. Going to catch a flight in about 30 minutes, but I had a small window that I could find a corner in a conference room to sit down with an old friend of almost 3 years, Miss Jane Wray. The backstory, I guess I'll start to share a little bit if it's okay, and then we'll welcome
Absolutely.
you. So back in April of 2017, my fiance Amy let me know that she was pregnant, which was a absolute surprise, something we didn't expect, and obviously couldn't tell anybody because she was only a month pregnant. And baby on the brain happens to men, not as much as women, but somewhere along the lines. About a week after that, I was supposed to be in Panama City Beach, Florida, for a event for Dude Solutions. One of the roles that I have is to go out and meet with people, but also to work with our partners, which one of them is a co-op purchasing group that represents 27 states. So I'm supposed to be in Panama City Beach for a Monday morning. I get a flight, the last flight down on Sunday, which gets me in at about 11 p.m., and I get to the airport. And I ask the rental car agent where the hotel is, and he said, "I'm not familiar with that one. What's the address?" And I said, "Oh, it's this address here in Panama City Beach." And he said, "That's great. You're in Pensacola." So I flew to the wrong airport and had to drive, 140 miles after midnight to get down to this meeting. And I sit with all 27 states representatives, and I sat with Jane and met her for the first time, and she was just amazing. Her confidence, her focus, and her plan was flawless, yet she didn't have so much as a business card, and you literally got hired on the way to the airport.
Yeah.
Like, you applied for the job, and they gave it to you, and I don't even know how you packed your suitcase.
Not really.
And I was just amazed at that whole thing, and I couldn't share with you why I flew into Pensacola opposed to Panama City, because
Right.
But I got to tell you, if there was somebody I could tell and wanted to tell, knowing you in a minute, I wanted to tell you because I figured I could trust you with it. But, that was one of those things. And then months later, I shared with you, it was like, "Hey, I'm sorry if I was so out of it. My fiance just told me that we were having a baby or expecting a baby, and I wasn't put together." But in those 3 years, I've gotten to follow along and keep in touch with you and learn from you. And just about everything you said back then, you've either met or exceeded. And so I want to have you on the podcast because I think that's something that people should be reminded of, is like, you got to have a plan, you got to have that focus, you got to believe in yourself, and you have to have others that believe in you. So first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
That's the backstory of how we met. You live in Wisconsin.
I do.
We are in Arizona. You spent some time
It's my
down here. I
hometown.
just found out this is your hometown. But tell everybody a little bit about Jane Wray that I haven't, and whatever you want to put out there.
So I was a teacher when we still banged erasers, and I got in trouble every day as a teacher. My principal would literally come out and say, "Miss Wray, can I talk to you in the hallway?" And I finally, mid-September of my 7th year, I said, "I got to go." And I had $3,000, and I jumped in a Jeep, and I didn't have a job, and I didn't have a plan. And back then we didn't even have cell phones. So I just literally jumped in a Jeep with $3,000 and said, "Here we go." And so I first went to Nashville, and I got pneumonia. And my mom said to me when I called her that night from the hotel, "Turn back and come back home." And I said, "Nope, I'm pushing forward because I know I need to go forward." My end goal would have been Oregon. My girlfriends called me from Arizona. My mom relayed the message to me to call my girlfriend, and she said, "They want you in Arizona." I pulled in Arizona on October the 4th. It was 104 degrees at 5 p.m. And I knew I was in love. So here I am, not a license because can't teach in Arizona yet. Didn't really know what I wanted to do, and back then it was, if you can't teach, you sell. Mm-hmm. And so I went into corporate training and corporate retail and was able to start teaching people on the long side of retail, how to be a sense of urgency, how to treat a customer. And it was weird because I thought everybody knew that. I thought everybody knew that everything you do should be with passion. And then all of a sudden it was wide open to me that it wasn't the same. I am a dreamer, believer, doer, and I always have been since I was young. Now that I'm into my ending years of my career, I still do that same thing. And it's why when you said I had a plan, it wasn't really a plan at the time that I met you. It was a dream. So my late husband and I had made the decision that we were going to work the last 10 years of our career. We were going to work somewhere that couldn't afford us. That was the line that got both of us, that when we made it, that couldn't afford us and that we could give back to. When I lost my husband, I said, what if I never do that? So I had a fear factor in me. After the grief, after everything was over, I had a fear factor. So once again, I packed up 3 dogs, a 73-year-old woman, and I said, just leave everything right here in Arizona. Let's go see what happens on Route 66. And while I was driving down Route 66 in Tucumcari, New Mexico, there was a little job at the bottom of a monster page that said the YMCA of Metro Chicago needed a purchaser. So I called, and they said, can you be here tomorrow? And of course, I'm in New Mexico in a Jeep with 3 dogs and my mom, and I said, no. And they said, oh, well, we've got other candidates. And I said, you know what? The best fit for the job will come along. Well, 2 weeks down the road, they called me again and said, now can you come in? And I said, sure, no problem, because I was only an hour away at that time. Yeah. I go in, they hire me on the spot. I go home, and I say to my mom, who's in central Indiana, I said, so for the next 6 months, I'm going to commute from Kokomo, Indiana to Chicago every day. And she said to me, I don't know how you're going to do this. And I said, let's just get AAA and go, right? So I went to the YMCA.
How long is Kokomo to Chicago?
Oh, 3.5, 4 hours. So I'd leave
each way?
Yeah. So I'd leave somewhere around 4:30 in the morning.
Time out. I'm learning stuff here. So I'm going to have to time out on this one. So you spent 7 to 8 hours every day for 6 months commuting for a purchaser job at the YMCA Chicago.
They needed me.
Go ahead.
Okay. So my thing is when somebody needs you, that means it's endless, right? I can't be Mother Teresa because I'm not. And at the same time, they needed me. They were losing money, and you can't have such an amazing organization and lose money. And so I went in, and all I did was take all 28 facilities and tell them to stop spending money and to ask and to do. And then all of a sudden it became, can we ask you a question? Sure. And then you help them, right? And so they would call me, and I had one executive director call me, and she said, Jane, if I have to repaint this wall one more time, I'm going to lose my mind or quit my job. And I said, okay, let's go look at it. And so we looked at it. I called the people at Kilz, K-I-L-Z, and I said, I have a wall that we are repainting about every 3 months because it looks so gross. They came out, painted the wall, and it lasted.
Yeah, that stuff's magical.
It is. And at the same time, no one thought that pattern through, but I had to do it in Arizona. And so luckily I had that information. So once I finished getting their purchasing department in place and it was totally automated by a program, I said, I gotta go. I hate Chicago. No offense, Chicagoans. It's not that I don't. I
have at least one Chicago listener, so
I love your city to play in, but I just don't like working there.
Yep.
Driving up Ashland every day, because we lived in Oakland. Driving up Ashland every day, the sadness overwhelmed me every day. The anger overwhelmed me every day. And I saw everything from the worst of human nature to the best of human nature.
Yep.
And yet it just overwhelmed me. And so I couldn't do it. And so I retired my mom when she was 55 years old. I said, I don't ever want you to work again. I want you to just have a life that you haven't had since you raised 5 kids.
Yep.
And so I said to her, I've dragged you this way. Now, what do you want to do? And she said, I'd love to live on a farm. And I said, time out. I have known you for 50 years, and I have known where you grew up. I knew my grandparents, and none of that happened on a farm.
Yep.
And she said, well, when I was 5, and I'm like, Mom, that doesn't even count. She was like, I just want to live on a farm. And I'm like, okay. And my mom can guilt you into, like, literally and just be sweet about it. So I was like, okay, let's go. So I found a sweet little red farmhouse,
Yep.
brought her up and showed her, and she said, this is perfect. So I took this job that was called a purchasing coordinator, and I didn't really know anything about it, and I didn't even know what the acronym stood for. And I didn't know very much about Wisconsin other than Wisconsin Dells. I get in there, and during my interview, I said to them, and you have to ask this question every time you do something, what was the worst day? Or what was the worst thing that could have happened? They said to me yesterday, and I was like, really, why? And they said, well, we're $356,000 in debt, and the bank just turned down our loan. And I said, I'll take the job. And they said, you got to leave for Panama City right now. And I'm a packer. And so I literally took a very small bag, not knowing I didn't even know how long I was going to be there.
You got to have your glasses.
I had to have my glasses. And so when we got there, I was overwhelmed. I didn't know anything, but I knew enough from my history and my career to ask the right questions, or at least say to them, I'll be back.
Yep.
My dream at that point was still the same thing, to give back to something that could never afford me. And it wasn't me, it was my skill set.
Right.
It was my knowledge from working in the private sector for so long. I wanted to go back to the public sector where there's never any money. And so I just started.
Yeah.
I started dreaming, and I started thinking. And on that plane, I just kept thinking, if I could just spread my wings over Wisconsin and let them sit still for just long enough for me to say, let's see what we can do, it would be ideal. In education, that very rarely happens, where you can just literally say, I've got the money for everything. Well, as I'm sitting here, it was literally free money.
Yep.
If somebody would have just talked to somebody. And that's what I was learning, is every time I talk to someone, I'm like you, I learn a little bit about him.
Yep.
Mitchell is sitting here. Do you want to tell him who Mitchell is right now? He's shaking his head no. His name's Mitchell Lilly. He will be the podcast that comes down the road, because he's amazing too.
Yeah. Whether Mitchell wants to be a part of this or not, he's a part of it.
Yeah, he's here to protect his honor in case we talk about him.
Yes, and he just got married. And congratulations, Mitchell. I'll segue for a second while we're on Mitchell.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Mitchell, for those of you that have listened to my podcast forever, you know that I've always said I'm not going to do advertising. I'm not going to pay for social media, visibility and all this stuff. And all of Mitchell, who is, how old are you? Am I allowed to ask that? You're 28, a young 28. Mitchell is one of the brightest social media guys that I know, and I talked to him last night, and he said, you got to boost your Facebook post. So I boosted, right? I did some boosting.
Yeah, we boosted.
So we boosted last night, and I got approval at like 3 o'clock. Thanks a lot, Mark Zuckerberg, 3 a.m. Approval of my boost. And so I got here this morning at 9 a.m. For our meeting, and I went over to Mitchell, and I says, you know what that boost got me? Nothing. And he looked at me and smiled. I said, I had 5 more people look at my post than before. But I think that the boost thing's going to work, and having great people like Mitchell is fantastic. So glad you're here. We're not going to pick on you too much, but we do appreciate you being here. And he's also doing crowd control, because we are in a conference center and we're in the corner. He is closing the door. You'll hear music playing. There's another event down the hall that they're playing music. There's 106 people in the room next to us that are coming out for phone calls, and Mitchell is single-handedly escorting them out the door as fast as possible to keep the sound as pristine and perfect as it can be. So, and
really, that's what we do together all the time. And so when I came in, Mitchell was just a kid. And I said to him, what do you really want to do? And he said, I want to own my own marketing agency someday. And I said, that's a good gig. And I said, I'm too old, so let's see what you can do. And so we started talking, and literally going from sitting in a corner, being slightly bored because there wasn't enough work to do, the minute I said to him, it's yours.
Yep.
It's all yours. Go, do whatever you want to do. We have, it's a way to grow by allowing other people and trusting them to be a part of your dream. Then that's part of the belief, right? So I didn't have any part of if he could really do it, but he had the same kind of passion that I did, just younger. And so I said, do it. Do whatever you want to do. Just promise me 2 things. And he said, yep. And I said, always, always remember that I'm going to give 100%, and so are you. And 2, don't ever stop believing. And he said, you got it. And to me, that's how I operate everything. And so as we sit here, I dropped a bombshell 3 weeks ago. And I'm going to drop a bombshell on you because it's important for me to say this. As I sit before you, I have uterine cancer. And the only thing that I can tell you is that I had a reaction just the same way as everybody else does when I say it. And I didn't tell anybody because we needed some more information and we needed to know what was going to happen. And we've worked through most of it. We'll work through the rest of it next week. But I told Mitchell, and this is the kind of belief you have to have, is I sent him a text message when he was 4 feet away from me, and I said, and we were in the middle of a meeting, and I said, hey, I have uterine cancer, don't ask any questions. And he looked at me with this WTF look, and he said, and I said, that's it, we're fine. That's what they have doctors for. And I think that the biggest piece for me is that it's teaching me a new level of believing and doing and then putting on the backside dreaming, because I have to trust everybody around me now. I have to trust everyone to understand that I am going to go rest. I am going to be out of work for about 6 weeks. And I work every day, 7 days a week. Right. 24 hours a day, and I don't do it because I need the money or because I don't have a life. It's because I love what I do. There is no better reward than a art teacher calling you and going, oh my God, I just got all of them, and I still have a budget. Mm-hmm. Or knowing that there were 6 incidences in Wisconsin for safety yesterday, and I've already started the ball rolling so that I can call the Department of Instruction and say, let me show you how much money we can save on metal detectors that are not obtrusive. And so as I do this, the whole time I'm thinking in my mind, how I'm going to keep doing this, how I'm going to have my life, and how am I going to remain Jane without changing everything around me? Well, the way you do it, and Josh, you know this, you just believe. You just say, you say every day, be awesome, and I say every day, I believe. I do. I believe in Santa Claus. I believe that every snowflake is different.
I did share the voicemail with Santa Claus, so you know,
yeah.
you know. He's
so
real.
I do know that Santa. Yeah, Josh just took that to the next level. And you know, you have to look at it and smile and go on and say, I believe you, I believe you. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's okay. Everything's going to be okay in the end. And that's how we look at it. And so as I drop this bomb on the people that love me, because I've been trying to do it like one at a time, yeah. They all look at me like you just did. Their eyes get a little pink. They try and fight something back. They try to be brave. And it's not a bravery I need you to have. All I need you to do is keep being you, because that created a world around me that is able to do what we did yesterday, right? Teach 106 people how important it is to be creative. Yeah. And to protect their brand and to move forward. And to watch Mitchell do his first time of presenting in front of a crowd, mm-hmm. That's so much more important than me sitting here looking at you and going, well, I am exhausted, I'm going to bed. I wasn't exhausted. I was watching this amazing thing transform for what's coming ahead. It's all part of the plan, right? So jokingly, anybody my age says, I have 8 years, I have 10 years, I have whatever. I have 8 years, and I get to retire to a beach. Yep. And that's what I'm going to do. And when I do it, I get to turn it over to him, or I get to turn it over to the next person, and walk away knowing that the best has been done. So in my life, and I would expect in your listeners' lives, I would expect no less than every day, know what your best is. If your best is literally just making a cup of coffee and a Keurig and then the rest of the day is shit, sorry.
That's okay. I'll just put that there was a swear word in it.
Okay. Shocking. Shocking. But you know, then that's the best of your day. So it's not a bad day. Yeah. It's a different day. And I know I didn't take a little placebo this morning and say, oh, the sun's out. It's a day. And I don't know how to explain that to people when you say, I don't want to or I can't. They really don't want to and they really can't. So it's okay. Yeah. And as we begin to move into a world where men like Josh are saying, I just want everybody to know to be awesome. And if you're not awesome, stay out of my space. That's not selfish. It's smart. It's not, there's no level of be awesome. Mm-hmm. And that's something that resonated with both of us. Like the minute you showed us the shirt, we were like, we want in. And now I am we joked about me writing a thing called, what was it? Being Jane? Being Jane. Because I do everything just like this, right? I met my husband. I married him 18 weeks later, and I forgot to tell my folks. So I told my dad like 5 days before, meet me in Vegas, I'm getting married.
Yep.
And it wasn't because I didn't want my dad there. It was literally because, we were working and we were happy and we built a swing in honor of our marriage. We built a swing.
Yep.
And we were busy. And so when we went to Vegas, we didn't think too much about it. It was hot and my shoes hurt my feet. So I got married barefooted by the high priestess Belinda at the little white wedding chapel. Does it make it any different than my sister had 7 bridesmaids and spent $45,000 27 years ago? Nope, it was the same perfect wedding. So I don't know if that's what you thought about when you thought about Jane and being on your podcast, but
first of all, you got me.
I know.
And I just sit here and I go, the first time I met you and you told me your plan, and the quote was, "I don't even have a business card," and we said, the business card isn't what makes you, and I said, you got this, and I believed in it. It wasn't. I don't just tell everybody you got this, but you got the. I mean, I just can't believe that you're the way you're handling and doing everything. You obviously got this, and I know that you're going to do everything to prove whatever statistic or number wrong. I've had one of my podcasts, Ron McCulley, who's a dear friend of mine. Doctors gave him 5 years, and he just celebrated his 10th. And I remember we saw the Red Sox play the Chicago Cubs for the first time in 100 years at Fenway Park, and he had just gotten diagnosed, and one of the folks that was with us said, "Hey, can I ask Ron a couple questions?" And he says, "Yeah," and went right over and said, "So what's the doctor say?" And Ron says, "Well, the doctor says anywhere between 0 and 20 years, but me 5, probably 5." He says, "But there's somebody that screwed that whole thing up and just called it quits right out of the gate and messed the number up. So I'm going to go for the far end of 20." And it's a mindset. I believe a big part of it is a mindset, and I know that you got it. And I'm honored that you've shared it with me and shared it with at least dozens of listeners that I have.
And out of those dozens, so let's say that all 12 of them are men.
Yep.
They now know, right? I'm 53. They now know, and somewhere in their brain, that if it ever happens to their loved one, they can say, "I've got this."
Yeah.
And they can say to her, "You've got this." Yep. And that's the wing spread that I always talk about, is just let me fly and let me do what I know to do. Because if I can get through this, which I'm going to, I've already got plans for a trip next year, so I know I'm going to not just get better, but get stronger. Then somebody can take that and go on. Just like you said, he said, "I'm going to go for the latter end of 20. Well, I'm going for the latter end of forever.
Yep.
Right? I don't lose anything right out of the gate.
Yep.
Now, I fall a lot.
Yeah.
I just want to make physically, mentally, and emotionally, I fall a lot. And at the same time, my rule for falling is, what's my rule?
You laugh first.
Laugh first and then ask. Because if you don't, it makes it a bigger deal than it already was. And so that's my piece, and that's how I am, and that's who I am, is you laugh first, right? Send it in a text message and say, "Hey, I've got uterine cancer," because to me it was kind of funny to watch his face go white, and at the same time, then right? Then the care comes, because there's been some people that I told and they literally turned around and they haven't contacted me since then.
Yeah, I think it's contagious.
Right, I don't have leprosy.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I tell everybody, stop looking at me like that, because the strength I'm going to give is to you. Because I've built my strength for the last 53 years. I'm ready.
Yeah.
We taught everybody here yesterday to be a warrior of something.
Yeah.
I love it. I love being a warrior. I love standing in the gap. I think it's the most important thing in order to get other people's dreams off the ground, to let me be the warrior and stand in the gap.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, this took a complete loop, because I was going to talk about your straws and just your branding and a lot of this other stuff, and this is just amazing.
Let's talk about straws.
No. This is your
We can save it for episode 2.
But it's one of the things that I really love about this podcast. One, some of the people that I have, I barely know.
Right,
Like Eddie
sure.
Slokowski was a great one. I told you, the 4 Minute Mile guy. I met him the night before in person, and we had some dialogue. But the background was like, it's a great, would be a great podcast. And then there's people that I have a relationship with that I know what most would probably consider enough. And then I have them on the podcast, and then I learn so much more. It's like everything that you think you're going to talk about just pushed aside for what really matters. And I've learned a lot about you, and things that you're challenged with right now, and how you look at it. It's amazing, because there's so many people out there. As I've done my talk that you guys have heard, if you take the numbers, and I'm not a statistician, but we've got somewhere around 350 million people in the United States today. And if you take, and I talk about cancer, I talk about opiate addiction, I talk about homelessness and all these things. If you calculate all those numbers as best as they have it, 1 in 3 people is dealing with something really, really bad, traumatic, difficult, something they might not be able to handle. You're dealing with one or maybe more of those things, and you're still smiling.
Yeah.
And you stood in front of that crowd of 106 people and made a difference in how they think about how they build their own personal brand for an hour plus. That's just amazing. One of the questions I want to ask you is, what do you attribute that to? Where does that come from? Was there an aha moment? Was it your husband's passing that made you stronger? Was it before that?
So I've always been a strong, independent child, adult, everything. I was my parents' worst nightmare, right? As smarter than they were is what they always said. But I grew up with parents. I grew up a fat child. So in 3rd grade, when Craig Williamson wouldn't kiss me and said that no one would ever love me because I was fat, I went home and I said to my parents, Craig Williamson wouldn't kiss me because I'm fat. And my dad said, that's okay, it's his loss. You're beautiful to us, and that doesn't matter. 2 hours later, my brothers, as we were walking into mall, said, hey, Moose, no animals allowed, you stay out here, jokingly, right? And I looked at him, and I said the F word, and I walked right into Sears and kept spending money. So where does my strength come from? It comes from all of the bad and all of the teasing, but it comes from the love that I've received, and it comes from the promises that were made, but it also comes from the promises that were broken. Everybody's been fired from a job, but if you get fired from a job that you think that you're going to be at forever, or if you leave a job and they just go peace out, and you think, well, where's my party? None of that mattered, because I live, and I'm not a live in the moment person. I wish I could say I am, but I'm really not. I'm a worrier, and I like to plan ahead sometimes, and at the same time, I think that the most important piece of it was when my husband died. I got a call that he had fallen and that he was in the hospital in a coma, and they couldn't treat him because in Mexico you pay and then the doctor will work on the patient. Well, I'm in Phoenix and he's in southern Mexico, and I took out my 401k. At that time it was about $15,000, took it out in cash, jumped in another Jeep because that was always our car. Yep. And I drove through all of Phoenix, all of Arizona, through Juarez, Mexico in the middle of the night, not even thinking about what was going on there, and straight through and down by myself with $15,000 in my pocket. I got down there. No one spoke any English. I had money. They understood that. And then I learned again that in a tiny little town they have brownouts, and so I had to pay a little extra so that Gobby's room, that's my husband, would have a generator in it, so that if anything happened, all of his machines kept going. Well, he stayed in his coma, medically induced, for 6 weeks, and so I had no phone. I didn't pack any books. I didn't think anything like that. I spoke no Spanish. So I was in my world, and I laid on the floor, and above me is the love of my life. And I hear everything. I hear how his head is squishing together. I hear his lungs. I hear his heart. And the whole time I'm sitting there and I'm laying there on this floor, I'm thinking, you better get up. You better get up. And then I realized I wasn't talking to him, I was talking to me. And that I had to start thinking, that I had to stop being so snarky, because here comes another cuss word. I was a bitch up to that point. I was a business bitch, and I was everywhere. And in my family, they literally know that I'm the queen. right? And so I'm laying there, and I said, you know what, the queen's got to get up. The king's dead, in theory. So I had to get up. So I ran across the street every day to the pharmacy and got the medicine that needed to go into his IVs. Still not speaking any English, but human. The human nature of it all of a sudden the lady at the pharmacy realized what was happening. And so I went in one day, and she had a Fanta grape soda and a chicken. And she said to me, comida, food. She wanted me to eat. And I'm like, what? And she was like, comida. And I said, gracias. And I took the chicken, and for the first time I'd eaten a meal in about 2.5 weeks. And then all of a sudden, the guard came to me like 3 days later, and they had a box full, already pre-cut everything. And in the bottom of the box was tin foil and ice, and that's how they made a cooler. And they had made beans and rice, tortillas, chicken, carne asada, and they were like, comida. And I said, thank you. And then he said, dos, and I said, yeah. He said, necesite ayuda. And I looked at him, and he said, I need help. Necesite ayuda. And that's how I was taught, that if I needed anything, that's how I was to say it. When I left there, my 2 girlfriends met me at the border. I had to leave Gabriel down there. He couldn't be moved. And so they met me at the border, and here's 2 young girls. They were about 20 years younger than I was. And they said, get in, we'll drive you the rest of the way home. I woke up back in Phoenix with my mom sitting in the car next to me, just waiting for me to wake up. And when I woke up, she said, hi. And I said, hi. And she goes, you don't have any dirty laundry? And I just looked at her, and I went, no. And she said, okay. And that was it. There was no tears. She knew I needed a minute. So this incredible woman just walks inside with me like I haven't been gone for 6 weeks.
Yep.
And I haven't just walked away from the love of my life that will never be the same again. And we had him for about 18 months after that, but he was like a 10-year-old, so he knew when I sat next to him, he loved me, but he wasn't in love with me. And so I had to adjust to that feeling also, right?
So he came out of the coma.
He came out of the coma. We put a metal plate in his head, and he came out of the coma, and I had to leave. I left him with a sister in a little town called Delicias, and she would take care of him. And then he was about 10 years old, so we taught him how to ride a bike and go around and collect everybody's cans. And the man at the little bodega would give him a Diet Coke for those cans. And so he had what we would call a valuable life at the end, but then he had a series of strokes in about 18 months, and we lost him initially to the injury. And through the whole thing, there was never time. There was never a time to stop. And so was I a hero? No. Was I a wife? Absolutely. And that's what and so everybody, when they hear the story, they're like, oh my God, that's so amazing. But you would do the same thing. You would do the same thing for your sons. You would do the same thing for your fiance. Mitchell said to me today, he's ready to go home because he misses his wife. Those are the things we all do. And if you're not doing them, then just stop for a minute and realize that somebody's doing it for you. And that's how I get through all of this. That's where the strength came from, is my brothers calling me a moose, and my parents telling me I'm beautiful, and God giving me the hardest task of my life, and then letting me come through and be like I am now.
You're amazing.
Thank you.
You are. I mean, you are. You're amazing, and your presence is absolutely like lights out when you walk into a room, and when you talk to people, when you're with a group, you do such a phenomenal job of making it feel like you're talking directly to an individual in a packed room of people, and not many people can do that, and that, sharing this tells a lot.
Yeah.
But you want to know something? What's amazing is that a lot of people would have taken those experiences and not made them into a positive outcome for their life. They wouldn't start to realize that they have to value their time. I think I might have done it with the talk in Wisconsin, where I talk about it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter how much money you have, every single human has the exact same thing every single week, and that's 168 hours, and that's your time.
That's it.
And that's all you got, and we all got the same number of hours. We can't find more. And I know I'm awful at it. I know that I am a major work in progress. I mean, one of my biggest drivers is trying to drive down my daily screen time on my phone. And I told somebody the other day, I said, I don't like to admit this, but there was a time that I had over 13 hours a day in screen time. 50% of my day collectively was screen time. And I've cut that down by almost half. But I want to cut that down even more. Because that time is valuable, and because we do get into this, I'm so rushed with everything that I do, and now that we have Chance, and Danny's being, is 12 and going through that and getting ready for the teenager years. Oh my God!
Yeah.
And all the animals and all the travel and everything, and you go, where did the time go? Like, it's December, right?
Yeah.
We're 20 days from Christmas.
And at the same time, you're moving heaven and earth this week for why? Why are you moving heaven and earth this week?
Oh, I'm moving heaven and earth to get the job done, to get all of my stuff in order so that I can get some time with my family from basically, the halfway point of the month through the new year.
And Chance.
And get to a Chance for my Alaska trip. Yeah. Well, that's it. I thought we were talking about the total over. Yeah. So I'm going to Alaska. Yes. I committed to a speaking engagement in Alaska, which, for those of you that don't know how far Alaska is from Boston, it's about 6,000 miles of flying each way. So I'm going up there for 30 hours because the date that I committed to do it is the day before Chance's birthday, and I need to make sure that I get home for that, for good old number 2. So, yeah.
And you don't regret it?
No, I wouldn't change it no, I wouldn't change it. Danny's 12, and I had to make a very, very difficult decision. I think it was his 3rd or 4th birthday. Our Dude University, I was in sales originally at Dude Solutions, and a very large percentage of my yearly business came in 4 days at this Dude University.
Yeah.
And so I had to be there, and it happened to fall on Danny's birthday. And it was the hardest thing. I think it was the first time that I actually cried in front of Amy. I've known her since we're teenagers, and the first time I cried to Danny. And I won't forget it. Amy picked me up at the airport. She used to drive me to and from the airport. And so she picked me up, and she just looks at me and she says, "You got to tell him." I'm like, "I don't want to tell him."
Yeah.
I don't want to tell him that. And so Danny's sitting in the back seat, and I turn around and I said, "Hey, buddy, Papa's got to tell you something," because he calls me Papa. And I said, and I started to choke up, and I said, "I'm not going to be home for your birthday." And I started to come up with a reason. And you want to know something? There wasn't one. There wasn't a reason. And the only saving grace I had was before I could make up some cockamamie excuse, because you got a reason or an excuse. And most of the time, all we got is excuses.
Right.
So before I could come up with a cockamamie excuse, Danny goes, "It's cool, Papa." And I was like, "Whoa, wait a second." And I kind of just froze. And he goes, "You must have something really important to do and work hard so you can make money to take us to Disney World."
Perfect.
And I said, "Man,
Nothing
we
better.
started a salesperson early with this
Yeah.
guy." And I said, "You are exactly right." And we've gone to Disney World a number of times, but I've missed one birthday, and I can't miss another one for it. I missed Amy's birthday. We did a birthday weekend this year. And that's a
Cost you way
tough
more
one.
than Disney World, didn't it?
Yeah, I'm sure I'm still going to be paying for that for a while. I'm reminded of it. We had a nice weekend. You try to sell the idea. I mean, kids are harder than adults for understanding. And her birthday was on a Monday, and I said, "Well, we'll have a birthday weekend, and what are you going to do on Monday?"
Yeah.
But it's not right, and it's hard.
It is hard.
It's so hard because I can't tally my time with, people say, "Well, can you cut down the time that you're on the road?" And they say, as an inspirational speaker, you can't,
No.
because people aren't coming to your house and paying you. People are paying you so you go to their house. And that makes it hard. So, but we try to do what we can do as best we can all the time.
That's why you always got to be a dreamer, a believer, and a doer.
Yeah.
That's what makes it come together.
Absolutely. Well, I got to close out with
go.
something here. I know you got to go. let's talk about the straws for a minute.
Okay.
Because I have to. So the straws. So here's the deal. There has been so much, and and by the way, I've become a huge fan of Jason Momoa. Amy's laughing at me, Aquaman, who I tell the story. I saw him at Chicago Airport, know nothing about him other than Aquaman. I wanted to get my picture taken with him so I could be cool to Danny, and couldn't figure it out. And what to talk about or who he was other than Aquaman. I just think that's just corny. And found out that he is a huge advocate to reduce or remove single-use plastic bottles, water bottles. And I've just become a fan. So I've been, following and commenting and trying to get to know him. And so this kind of goes with the straws, because for the last couple of years, everybody talks about single-use plastic straws, what it's doing in the environment, da 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 da. I have yet to really find anybody that is doing something. I've seen some people here at the Embassy Suites in Scottsdale. They have paper straws, which is cool. But I haven't seen anybody really push the envelope on something reusable and all this stuff. And I came and saw you in June when you got this lime green bag and you tell this story. And this is about branding, and this is about personal branding and about your branding. So tell the straw story. We'll close out with a good straw story.
So 2.5 years ago, we all know that there's a large brand name out there that had announced they will no longer give plastic straws. And to me, that made so much sense, not because they had the money or they didn't have the money, whatever it is. It was literally about what they were saying and doing. And so I decided that we should make a difference, because we're cease purchasing, and that's what I do. I protect the state of Wisconsin when it comes to money. And so I wanted to make the impact with our brand so that anytime anybody thought something, they would have our name. And so I found these stainless steel straws, and we had our name. And I told Mitchell, I said, I want our name on the straw. So then he had to go out and find how to get the straws engraved. Mm-hmm. And so by the time we got it all done, I have 2 ways to test anything, and that's always my family and Mitchell. Mm-hmm. And so my sister hasn't used metal utensils since she was little. She says it hurts her mouth. So I send her one, and she's like, it hurts my mouth. And I said, well, put the green tip on it and see what it does. And she was like, it's perfect. I can use it every day. She's so excited. And my mom said, why are you doing these? Because you drink out of moldy straws in all of your cups. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, it's okay, it'll be fine. And then I found a little cleaner to go in it. Mm-hmm. So now I pass out these bags to everyone. Mm-hmm. And I don't even care if you're a school or a board member, whatever it is. The importance is that I'm doing 2 things. 1, I'm putting my brand in front of you. Mm-hmm. And 2, I'm giving somebody the chance to make a little bit of a difference. Mm-hmm. But when they go to Starbucks, because mm-hmm. that's who said it, now they're going to think about my business and our business and what we can do. And so I give away straws, and if I give them to a man, I always say, do you have a wife? And he's like, yeah. And I give them 2, because and then I don't make their wife a thief. Mm-hmm. And you have to think like that, that you literally, well, if you have a wife, then the given is, my wife's going to steal it. One man said to me, I have 3 teenage daughters, they're going to fight over these. And I said, here you go. Yeah. Here you go. Here's 4 more. I don't want you, you don't need the women in your life mad at you. Yeah. And so our brand is to always say, we are going to manage up. We're mm-hmm. going to think of the answers before you have the questions. And so we do that through our straws, the world's most amazing ink pen, some of our swag and collateral that we do all year round, mm-hmm. Because branding is not just professional, it's personal also. Mm-hmm. I would never want to be the one that says, we were the creators of plastic straws. Right? I don't blame Starbucks for saying we're going to get rid of them, because there's not a person in the world, literally, even in the smallest parts of Africa. My cousin mm-hmm. had a green straw, and one of the people from this small village said, Starbucks? Mm-hmm. And she was like, yeah. So having that green plastic straw, I wouldn't want it to be me. Mm-hmm. And so now I'm the opposite end of that. I want everybody to know it was me that helped stop that thing. And when I say me, I say it's really us. That's the royal me-we. Because it does take a village. It does take you remembering the straws. It does take Mitchell to be the most creative thing I've ever seen in my life. And it does take me being willing to talk about them mm-hmm. and believe that as we put them out there, that's what's really going to happen every time. Is that somebody's going to say, craziest woman I ever met, and at the same time, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And that's how I do it.
Amazing. I love it.
Good.
Keep going with the straws. Every time I see you, I grab at least one. 'Cause
Yep.
I know I find somebody. I actually gave a straw at a Starbucks. I took a couple in Wisconsin, and I'm a Starbucks guy. And there was the person behind me, a pay it forward, if you will. I said, "Hey, check this straw out.
Don't pay
this is from
$8.
Yeah. So your straw campaign is gonna go like wildfire. Everybody's gonna know Jane Wray and
Yep.
Mitchell and CISA and the straw people, regardless if they're purchasing from, the public K-12 world. So I got a lot. So I'm going to close out, but we touched on. I mean, I want to touch more on what you do on your day job. Maybe we'll do a second podcast, but I'm going to give a quick rundown. You help support public K-12 schools to get the best possible pricing on things that they buy regularly, irregularly, everything from a brand new roof to, you talked about dry erase boards at a discount. So if people are in Wisconsin and they want to start to purchase through your contracts to save money and to have the best in industry products and solutions, how do they get a hold of you and Mitchell?
They go to CISApurchasing.org, and that's a CESA purchasing.org. And right on our brand new beautiful website that Mitchell created, it says Start Saving Now. Mm-hmm. You click on it, you fill out the information, you get a letter back from me, that's an email back from me that tells you who we are and what we do, and you're in.
Yep.
And then from that moment on, you have both of us forever and ever to help you figure out ways to either take the money that you have and go further, or find the money you don't have and get something done. Mm-hmm. And I have made a commitment to the educators and the nonprofits, the cities, the counties of Wisconsin, that I feel like that little man, no job too small.
Yep.
Because there's really no amount of money that is ever not worth spending on a school. Mm-hmm. And so CISA Purchasing will go play ball or go to the table, whatever it takes to figure out how every child will get more. Mm-hmm. And then the other piece of that is by us finding tools and services to save them money, my hope is every teacher gets to have 45 minutes back in a day.
Yep.
Think about 45 minutes in Josh Peach's life.
Oh, yeah.
And how if I could give you that with no wings on both sides of you in an airplane or not in the back of a car, but literally just 45 minutes to do something.
Right.
Your life is changing.
Huge. Yep.
Changing every day. 45 minutes. You're just like, I am so glad I got that robot mower, and I'm a facility guy, and now my grass is mowed, and I can just kind of sit here and like chill for a minute.
Right.
Or I can go watch the sixth graders play kickball. Mm-hmm. When was the last time anybody got to watch sixth graders play kickball?
Right.
So that's what we do, and that's why we do it.
Awesome. And I'll put your link on my site and how people can get a hold of you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I've asked you to do this a number of times. I've been saying, and I guess it was the drop a bomb was when you were comfortable to go ahead and do it. But I appreciate you. I appreciate our friendship. I think you are amazing.
I do too. I think what you do is more amazing than anybody. Yeah. Be Awesome is going to change the world.
Well, that's a big belief. I gotta run
right?
after.
You're going to just have to hold Be Awesome in your hands and say, you know what? It's, we don't need Kevin Bacon. We just need 7 parts of Be Awesome. Well, how did you know Be Awesome? Well, I met a guy who met a girl who Be Awesome.
Who has a T-shirt.
Right.
Yes. Well, Thank you, and thank you, Mitchell, for crowd control. We will have to do another episode from the road. I want to keep up with how you're doing with everything, and
we'll find you.
So, guys, this is going to wrap it up. I got to catch a flight home. I'm going to spend a couple of days with the family, and then, like Jane and I were talking about, I'm heading to Alaska, and this has been an incredible journey through. I'm going to do a wrap up of this year, and I found out recently that a lot of people listen to me on Spotify, and I'm not going to ask you for reviews and offer free T-shirts anymore. If you want to do one, that's great, and I appreciate it, and it makes a difference. If you don't, that's okay too. Just keep listening. I have heard so many people tell me that they listen or they're following me on social, but they're creeping and they don't want to and they don't want to do anything, and that's okay. if you find it's important enough for you to take the time to listen or follow or do whatever, I don't pay attention to that stuff as much as I want to get the word out to more people. Mitchell's going to teach me about this boosting and advertising and stuff, and we're gonna hopefully change. We're probably going to hopefully change some people's mindsets and make a difference in the world, one person at a time. So remember, if you can be anything, be awesome, and have a great day.